Not all pain announces itself with noise. Some pain learns how to be quiet. Some turns into silence. Some hardens into strength that looks impressive on the outside but feels exhausting on the inside. There are people who have learned how to look fine simply so they don't worry anyone. They smile, they function, they perform. But behind the control, behind the emotional distance, behind the extreme independence, there is always a story. I warned you before. When pain is not understood, it does not disappear, it hides. And it hides so well that it turns into behavior. What makes this even harder is that almost no one recognizes it. People don't see the wound, they see the behavior, and they judge. In our time together now, you are going to understand the first hidden traits of those who have suffered too much and why these people often behave so differently, sometimes even confusing themselves. More importantly, you will begin to see how silent pain can be transformed into awareness, into choice, and eventually into healing. Stay with me until the end, because this may change the way you see yourself and the way you see the people you love. Some scars never show on the body, but they show in the eyes, in how long it takes someone to trust, in the sudden urge to disappear even while surrounded by people. Some wounds leave no visible mark, yet they quietly shape everything inside. Old pain does not announce itself. It becomes a way of being, silence where there should be words, stiffness where there was once openness. Sometimes the person carrying it forgets they are even wounded. They don't think, "I'm hurt." They just feel tired. Everything takes more effort than it should. Life feels heavier for reasons they can't explain. I've said before that trauma is a psychic wound that, when ignored, keeps bleeding inward. But I also said this wound can become a passage, not to erase what hurt, but to transform what still pulses like a threat. When pain is truly heard, it does not become a sentence. It becomes awareness. The problem is that no one teaches us how to listen to pain. The world demands performance, not listening. So those who have suffered too much learn how to cope. They build masks. They create emotional shortcuts. They hide. They go on living, sometimes even smiling. But something inside remains switched on, constantly alert, as if any small touch could reopen what barely healed. You may recognize yourself in some of these traits, or you may suddenly understand someone you love. Either way, this is not about diagnosing or analyzing anyone. It is about meeting these patterns with empathy, presence, and less guilt. Because no behavior appears out of nowhere. Every trait has a story behind it. And if at any point you feel a tightness in your chest or a lump in your throat, don't be surprised. That is simply your soul recognizing something familiar. And that recognition, as small as it may seem, is already a step toward healing. Some people learned very early that depending on others is dangerous, that asking for help leads to disappointment, humiliation, or abandonment. So the psyche does what it must to survive. It builds a solution. The person becomes everything for themselves, strong, decisive, unbreakable, and deeply exhausted. I spoke about the false self, the structure the ego builds when being authentic feels unsafe. It protects, but it also isolates. The person gets used to carrying everything alone, and without realizing it, the world starts believing they can handle it all. But no one should have to handle everything all the time. His is the first trait of those who have suffered too much: hyper-independence. It is often mistaken for maturity or strength, but it is not a sign of health. It is an old scar. It may look impressive from the outside, but inside it feels heavy. The person refuses to show pain but feels it, refuses to ask for comfort but needs it. They may not even remember how to trust without fear anymore. This rigidity spreads everywhere. Relationships become performances, work becomes over-control. Life becomes self-discipline without softness. The cost is high, the chest tightens, rest feels undeserved, touch feels threatening, and even when surrounded by people, there is a deep sense of being alone. Hyper-independence is not freedom. It is a prison with an internal lock. Those who live this way do not want to be a burden. They just want to make sure they are never left hanging again. But in doing so, they remain silently wounded. The second trait often found in those who have suffered too much is excessive empathy. At first, this seems like a virtue, and sometimes it is. But when empathy becomes a survival strategy, it stops being just a quality and turns into a coping mechanism. Some people learned, even as children, to scan the emotional environment constantly. They sensed danger before it arrived. They noticed shifts in tone, silence, looks. They became experts at reading the room. And without realizing it, they learned to feel for others before learning how to feel for themselves. This over-empathy does not come from softness. It comes from necessity, from living with emotional unpredictability, from having to anticipate an unstable parent's mood, from trying to keep peace at home at the cost of their own childhood. I spoke about projection as the unconscious act of placing onto others what we haven't yet faced in ourselves. Often people who feel too much for others are unknowingly trying to care for their own unfelt pain through someone else. They become the listener, the supporter, the one who is always there. But behind all that giving is deep exhaustion. Because when you are emotionally available to everyone, you often disappear from your own life. Too much empathy can look noble, but it can also be an escape, a way to avoid turning inward, a way to exist for others because existing for yourself feels overwhelming. This pattern often creates unbalanced relationships. One gives, the other takes. Listening to others becomes an excuse to never hear yourself. Over time, sensitivity turns into overload. Many people with this trait feel invisible when they are not useful. And that is the clearest sign that empathy has shifted from love into defense. At its root, this sensitivity once served a purpose. It kept someone safe. But now, the greatest act of empathy may be turning that attentiveness inward. The third trait is fear of true intimacy. Some people do not love halfway because they feel too little. They love halfway because they feel too much. They hold back, they analyze, they observe. Even when they start to trust, part of them remains hidden. A part that doubts, a part that whispers, "Be careful." This could hurt again. For someone who was wounded where they most needed safety, opening up stopped being simple. The memory of abandonment is louder than present affection. Love appears, but fear walks beside it. This is not drama. It is the unconscious recognizing patterns that once caused deep pain. Even when the person cannot logically explain their reaction, unconscious complexes take over. They show up as sudden withdrawal, irrational jealousy, emotional shutdown. Behind them is almost always an inner child who remembers exactly what it felt like to trust and lose everything. Outwardly, this person may appear confident, independent, even distant. They may say, "I don't need anyone." But beneath that is a buried longing. Every time someone gets too close, fear disguises itself as control, irritability, or silence. True intimacy requires presence, and for someone who has suffered deeply, being fully present feels dangerously exposed. Love becomes a battlefield instead of a refuge. If you love someone like this, patience is essential. And if you recognize yourself here, courage is required. Not to rush, but to consider that the present does not always have to repeat the past. Not all love hurts. Not every approach is abandonment. Sometimes it is simply someone choosing to stay. The fourth trait is the persona of strength, the strong one who breaks down alone. Many people are praised for being strong without anyone realizing that strength was never a choice. When life collapses too early, you either hold everything together or you disappear. So the body learns to function, to get up. The fifth trait of those who have suffered too much is sensory sensitivity. Loud noises feel overwhelming. Bright lights irritate the nervous system. Crowded places drain energy faster than words can explain. The mind may try to stay composed, but the body reacts first. The heart races, breathing shortens. The urge to escape appears without any clear reason. This is not being dramatic. It is not exaggeration. It is a nervous system that learned to live on high alert. Behind this hypersensitivity is always a story. A time when danger arrived without warning. A trauma that taught the body the world was not safe. When emotional pain is deep and constant, the body remembers even when the mind tries to forget. I once said that what does not come to consciousness returns as fate. In this case, it returns as physical sensation. The body speaks what the soul has not yet put into words. That sensitivity makes someone notice what others overlook. A sound that feels aggressive. A smell no one else reacts to. A look that lasts half a second too long and feels like judgment. It is like living with all the senses turned all the way up, even when there is no immediate danger. This state is exhausting and confusing, especially because people around them often don't understand. Why was that place too much? Why did that conversation drain you? But for the one experiencing it, everything arrives at full volume. This sensitivity can be a gift. Many people with it are intuitive, perceptive, deeply aware. But when rooted in trauma, it becomes a burden. The body becomes a battlefield, reacting to threats the conscious mind may no longer remember, but the soul still holds. Healing begins when we understand that discomfort is not weakness. It is memory. The sixth trait is an obsessive need for control, not because the person is bossy or power-hungry, but because chaos once felt unbearable. Control became a way to survive, planning every detail, anticipating every outcome, checking everything multiple times. It is not about dominance. It is about fear. Fear of being caught off guard again. Fear of reliving helplessness. On the outside, it looks like efficiency, responsibility, reliability. On the inside, it is constant tension. The mind never rests. Even when things are going well, it whispers, "What if something goes wrong?" I spoke about how the ego tries to control what the unconscious fears facing. In this case, control becomes a barrier against unpredictability, against vulnerability, against the memory of powerlessness. People caught in this pattern struggle to relax. Delegating feels dangerous. Surprises feel threatening. Often they don't even realize they are trapped. They just feel tired, overloaded, always fixing things, always anticipating, always responsible. Relationships become strained. Small decisions feel overwhelming. The present moment is never enough because the mind is always racing ahead. This obsession with control is not strength. It is a wound trying to protect itself. Life cannot be controlled, it can only be lived. And living requires a degree of trust. Not blind trust, but small openness. Healing doesn't come from dropping control overnight. It comes from realizing slowly that not everything will collapse if you let go a little. Letting go can feel like turning off the lights in a room where you once slept with everything on because you were afraid of the dark. At first it's unsettling, then it becomes rest, and rest does not always come through people or noise. Sometimes it comes through quiet. That brings us to the 7th trait, silence as refuge. Not isolation out of rejection, but silence as shelter. A need for space, a pause, a place where nothing is demanded. For those who have weathered internal storms, silence is not emptiness, it is repair. I spoke of withdrawal as a symbolic process of death and rebirth. When life feels overwhelming, the soul retreats to protect itself, not out of coldness, but survival. Silence becomes a cocoon, a place where pain does not need to perform, where nothing has to be explained. But over time, what began as healing can turn into a wall. Silence can become solitude. Solitude can become invisibility. This trait requires care. Not everyone who goes quiet is fine. Sometimes they are simply exhausted from trying to exist in a world that never stops demanding. The path is allowing silence without guilt, but also knowing when to open the door for someone who will stay. The 8th trait is a guarded heart. Saying, "I trust you" may sound simple, but for someone who was hurt while trusting, those words feel heavy. The body tightens. The emotion locks up. Not because love isn't there, but because the risk feels too great. The ego learns to protect. It builds filters, screens everything, analyzes tone, timing, gestures. Love arrives, but it goes through interrogation before being allowed in. This constant vigilance is exhausting for both sides. I spoke about living from fear versus living from trust. Here, fear becomes the lens. Even when everything is fine, something inside whispers, "Be ready." This could change. The unconscious does not recognize time. It reacts as if the threat is still present. Distrust becomes protection, but it also blocks intimacy. There is no deep connection without vulnerability, without risk, without allowing someone to come closer. Ironically, those who guard their hearts the most are often the ones who long for connection the deepest. The key is not to force openness, but to test slowly, to trust a little, to step forward without running away. Because maybe, just maybe, this time love did not come to hurt. It came to stay. The 9th trait is a sharp sense of justice forged by pain. It does not come from theory, it comes from lived experience, from being silenced, from injustice with no protection. A soul that has been wronged learns to recognize injustice instantly. Small disrespect triggers a strong response. Others may see overreaction. But the psyche is saying, "Not again." This trait often appears early. Children who saw wrong things and couldn't intervene. Teenagers who rebelled. Adults who defend fairness fiercely. This is the archetype of the moral warrior, fighting for dignity, not perfection. When balanced, it is noble. When driven only by pain, it can harden. The challenge is to keep the sword without becoming the battlefield. Pain sharpens perception. Which leads to the 10th trait, the ability to see the invisible in others. Those who have suffered develop an emotional radar. They notice what isn't said. They sense when a smile doesn't reach the eyes. This is not magic, it is memory. Having lived through quiet pain, they recognize it elsewhere. They listen without interrogation. They hold space without demanding explanation. This sensitivity can be healing, but it also carries weight. Those who see others clearly often forget themselves. They absorb, they carry, they disappear. Balance is essential, to feel with others without losing yourself. But seeing others so clearly comes at a cost. While you are reading eyes, gestures, pauses, and tones of voice, something deeper often whispers inside. What if I am too much? What if my presence is already a burden? Have you ever apologized for something small or for nothing at all? Have you ever felt guilty simply for needing comfort, attention, or rest? This brings us to the 11th trait of those who have suffered too much. The deep fear of being a burden. It is quiet, subtle, but persistent. A constant background feeling of shame for having needs, emotions, or pain. People who carry this fear rarely speak about it directly, but it shows everywhere. In the way they minimize their struggles. In the way they say, "I'm fine," even when they are not. In how they swallow tears so no one feels inconvenienced. This fear usually begins early in environments where emotional pain was ignored, dismissed, or treated as a problem. Children who were told to stop crying, to not be dramatic, or who simply learned that their feelings didn't matter, grow up believing that emotions are burdensome, that they themselves are inconvenient. The adult who emerges from this wound is often kind, responsible, and selfless. But you do not have to earn care. You do not have to over-explain yourself. Being here is already enough. And despite this fear of being a burden, something gentle often survives. Those who have lost a lot learn to find refuge in small, unnoticed details. And that brings us to the 12th trait, the ability to appreciate the little things. A warm cup of coffee held between your hands. Late afternoon light filtering through a window. A simple message asking if you got home safe. The sound of rain while the world keeps rushing. This is not romanticizing pain. It is what pain leaves behind. When you've lived through periods where everything felt unstable, the small things stop feeling small. They become signs of safety, of presence, of life continuing. Those who have been shattered learn to notice beauty others overlook. I spoke of the archetype of the wise one, the figure who descends into the shadow and returns with a quieter, deeper way of seeing. This is that wisdom, a sensitivity that does not need much to feel full. Gratitude not for suffering itself, but for the calm that follows, for moments that once felt impossible. This trait shows up in subtle ways. Someone who smiles at the sky changing color. Someone who is genuinely moved by a song. Someone who deeply appreciates small acts of kindness. This is not fragility, it is depth. Emotional maturity. It is surviving chaos without losing tenderness. And finally, we arrive at the 13th trait of those who have suffered too much. The need for purpose after pain. Survival alone is not enough. The soul wants meaning. It wants to understand why. It wants pain to become direction instead of weight. After deep suffering, many people begin searching for something larger than themselves. A reason to keep going. A way to make sure it was not all meaningless. That purpose is rarely grand or dramatic. Often it is simple and deeply honest. It may be helping someone else who is struggling, creating something meaningful, writing, teaching, caring, listening, being for someone else what no one was for them. Pain wants to become a path. I saw this as the beginning of individuation, The moment someone stops being imprisoned by their story and begins transforming it into awareness, into offering. This trait shows in how a person becomes less concerned with appearance and more aligned with truth. The pain does not disappear. It remains as memory, as scar. But it no longer dominates. It points. It guides. Those who reach this stage look back and realize that even broken, they kept going. Even wounded, they still cared. Even lost, they found a way to turn suffering into presence, and presence into purpose. This is not about being inspirational or strong. It is about living with intention, slowly moving from mere survival into conscious living. Pain becomes integrated rather than hidden. Something new is born in the soul. You are not your pain, but you do not need to erase it either. There is a strange wisdom in how we survive, a quiet strength forged without applause, without witnesses. Every trait we explored reflects something you did to protect what was precious inside you. Some traits became shields, others became compasses, some turned into weight, others into gifts, but none of them were mistakes. They were responses to pain, attempts to stay alive. I once said that the tree that reaches to heaven must have roots that reach down to hell. Everything you have become is connected to what you endured. You are not wrong for carrying these marks. You are alive, and being alive after all you've been through is a strength the world often fails to recognize. This is not about claiming everything is healed. It is about meeting those parts of yourself with kindness instead of judgment. They were trying to protect you too. You do not have to stay on guard forever. Pain no longer has to lead the way. It can walk beside you quietly, no longer steering your life. With awareness comes freedom, and with freedom, choice. If you saw yourself in any of these traits or recognized someone you love, let this understanding guide you. We will continue exploring these inner paths of pain, healing, and the psyche with honesty and respect. And remember this simple truth: my pain taught me too. Carry that awareness with you. It may help someone else feel less alone. Go gently. Tend to your soul. You deserve it.